Hultgren, congressman from the 14th Congressional District. My district is western suburbs of Chicago, basically Gurney and Joliet. What the Democrats in Springfield did in gerrymandering here in Illinois is just a travesty, a slap in the face of Illinois voters. Can't believe they keep getting away with the stuff that they're doing down in Springfield. But it is great to be with you. It's great to be with Paul and Steven. They truly are experts on something that is very complex and very confusing. But it is our job today to understand this so we can help explain it in simple terms to other people around us. Let them know the disaster of Obamacare and how this truly is pivotal for the future of our nation, for us to understand this and to be prepared to do whatever we need to do to stop it and turn it back around again. Interesting, this week, two groups that aren't our friends came out with some interesting news reports, CBS and NBC. NBC came out earlier this week and said, of the 14 million people who buy individual policies, 50 to 75% of them are going to lose their coverage. 7 to 10 million people at least are going to be told that their coverage, they will no longer have the option to continue coverage that they had before. In direct contradiction to what the White House has been saying, and what they went further to say is the White House has known about this for a long time, known that this was going to be happening. CBS also came out right after that and said already over 2 million people have been notified that they will no longer have access to their current coverage. Amazing. Not too long ago, again, we have to remember, let me tell you one other story I heard from one of my constituents. A great mom in my district, family of 5, had coverage that they liked, that they could afford, got notice recently that they were losing their current plan at the end of the year, but they would be charged at least $370 more per month for less coverage. Higher deductible, less coverage, $370 more per month. And that's at the low end. Steven and I were talking about how sometimes it's much higher than that of what the increase is going to be. Let's remind ourselves what President Obama said in 2009. He said, and I quote, "No matter how we reform health care, we will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period. No one will take it away, no matter what." Unbelievable to say that, and they keep saying it, and he keeps saying it, when he knows it is absolutely not true. We've got to understand this. They've said it's about choice. In reality, it's taking away choices from the American people. When someone who doesn't have kids is forced to buy insurance coverage with pediatric care in it, there's something wrong with that. President Obama has said that certain policies were canceled because they weren't good enough and don't cover essential services. But as I'm talking to my constituents, they would much rather have the coverage they had before at a reasonable cost than what they're being forced into. If they can even get answers to what the new policy is going to be. Rationing has arrived, masked in higher Obamacare deductibles as Americans will be forced to forego needed procedures and surgeries. We are witnessing right now another broken promise of Obamacare, and it's unacceptable. No one should be coerced into buying a new plan that costs more and either covers less or covers procedures they don't need or don't want. Another one that's interesting to me is when 62-year-olds, 60-year-olds are going to have to purchase maternity benefits. Something wrong with that. But that's why I've co-sponsored, along with many of my colleagues, a bill that just came out this week, Keep Your Healthcare Plan. It's the Keep Your Healthcare Plan Act of 2013, H.R. 3350. Protects Americans whose plans have been canceled as a result of this healthcare law. Allows insurance companies to keep offering the plans that the customers wanted and continue to want. And the bill ensures that Americans who keep their current health care plan will not face the Obamacare tax penalty. We're getting some good momentum on it. We're hearing Democrats talking about how important this is. When trying to defend the glitch-filled healthcare.gov website, the president said the Affordable Care Act is not just a website, it's much more. I'm afraid he is very right when he says that. Obamacare means higher premiums for the middle class. It's a $30 billion tax. That means you pay more for life-saving medical devices like pacemakers, diabetic pumps, and artificial heart valves. It's a $100 billion health insurance tax that makes individuals pay $110 in higher premiums, and small business pay $360 more for each family they cover, hurting jobs and stifling our economic growth. That means a college or business being forced to violate its religious convictions. I've got one in my backyard, Wheaton College, a great institution, being forced to violate its religious convictions by covering abortion-inducing drugs or paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines annually. Or it means individuals themselves having to pay for abortions through their insurance plans. It means being forced out of the plan you like. It's about the president selling a bill of goods to the American people. The president won't keep his promise to the American people. I will. And I'm encouraging my colleagues to keep our promise, to fight for them, to fight for our future. Sometimes in Congress, you have to make tough decisions. Sometimes you have to stand alone. It wasn't easy for me, being the only member of Congress in Illinois, to vote against adding $1 trillion to our debt for a pork-filled agreement with no teeth. This was no clean CR that we passed a couple weeks ago. You probably remember the Kentucky kickback where Senator Mitch McConnell got $2 billion earmarked for a troubled lock and dam project. This CR also paid for activities to counter Joseph Kony's Lord Resistance Army in Africa. It allowed the Department of Transportation to spend up to $450 million to repair Colorado roads. It gave the widow of Senator Frank Lautenberg a $174,000 gratuity. That's what was termed in the bill, a gratuity, even though her husband had a net worth of over $56 million at the time of his death. Above all, the CR ignored the fact that we are on the highway to insolvency. If not now, when are we going to solve our debt problem? When Pat coincided the Medicare expansion law into law, the Chicago Tribune estimated we would eventually have to pay about $99 million in 2017 and $210 million additional by 2020. In total, Illinois will be on the hook for $573 million additionally. Now we're hearing about 9 out of 10 of those initial Obamacare enrollees who are signing up in Medicaid. This will put an even bigger burden on Illinois, already crushed under unfunded liabilities. This is just another hidden cost of Obamacare, a massive Medicaid expansion which Illinois will have to pay for. What was sold as an exchange to sign up for private insurance is turning out to be another way to expand entitlements and entitlement programs. The national debt is racing past $17 trillion. That's $54,000 per man, woman, and child throughout America. And then you add on top of that another $21,000 of debt for every man, woman, and child in Illinois because of the failure of Springfield. $75,000 for every single person alive today. $5.7 trillion of our national debt was added under President Obama, who previously called this type of behavior as a leadership failure. And yet we are again kicking the can down the road. It should not require a drastic government shutdown to wake us up to our national debt crisis. On our current path, Social Security will be bankrupt by 2033, and Medicare costs are exploding. But instead of shrinking the growth of our entitlement system, we're adding a massive new program that will add $1 trillion of new taxes and $500 billion to the deficit in the next 10 years. That's the health care bill. This is absolutely unsustainable if we are to protect the safety net programs for future generations. Yet Washington is avoiding talking about what's really behind our debt crisis and what can help to fix it. Entitlement reform and meaningful spending cuts for starters. In the House, we voted more than 40 times to defund, to delay, to put off, to end Obamacare, to repeal it entirely. 40 times. The media talks about that a lot. You have to recognize, though, that of those 40 times, 7 times passed the House, passed the Senate, signed by the President. 7 out of 40. That's about 20%. Much higher percentage when we're dealing with Obamacare defunding or reform. We've had a higher success rate than on anything else that we passed through Congress. It's a much lower rate that the Senate has actually taken up. And then you put on top of that the multiple times that the President has acted unilaterally against his presidential authority, but the Senate won't stand up and do its obligation constitutionally to stop him. This is an area where we can have an impact, and people are seeing the problems like they've never seen it before. We do need smarter and simpler market-based approach to healthcare reform. We need to open it up, open up competition, give people options, go after abuse, lawsuit abuse, and have real lawsuit abuse reform out there, making sure that people can have access to the doctors they want to see and the plans that they want to have. We hope the President does wake up and the Democrats in the Senate does wake up to the grim reality of our debt crisis in Obamacare, what they actually mean to America and to our children and to our grandchildren. It's just ridiculous to pay lip service to addressing a debt every few months and then doing nothing. If not now, when are we going to address it? And adding trillions is fiscally irresponsible. Procrastinating on our debt endangers our economy and endangers our future. If we don't stop the skyrocketing debt now, then when will we do it? Thanks for being here today. Thank you for wanting to learn about this. Thank you for being an advocate for the truth. Hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.
selection by pure definition. If I were to construct a plan like that for Motorola or a large employer group, it wouldn't last long, and nor would I, quite frankly. It just wouldn't make any sense. And then I read that it's important to know that the government has reasonably priced plans if you can get to them on the website. But really what we didn't know, what wasn't clearly told was the amount of deductibles. If I told you today, look, I'll give you cheap insurance, it's a $10,000 deductible. And by the way, that's not the family deductible, that's your deductible. So if you have 2 or more folks on the plan, well, how about 20 grand, 25 grand? That word right there is what? That means self-insurance. You're insuring yourself. So what good is it to have a network at all with a high deductible? That was never what we intended. So I'm sorry to say that these promises of low premium are nothing more than choose your deductible. If you get a car worth $30,000 and you took a $30,000 deductible, I'll give you the insurance. You can have it. Great. Be great. I'll even wax your car. Let's move on to the enrollment system. I've been doing online enrollment since 1999. We were hired by Northwestern Memorial Hospital to simplify their enrollment. I think Northwestern prints money in the basement, I'm not sure, but they do a fine job of making money. So they paid us a handsome sum. Technology was new, and I can tell you handling this amount of data is cumbersome. We are Apple developers at Westlake Financial Group. You would expect that. I got a letter less than a month ago from Apple themselves that their database for developers was hacked. And all of my private information somehow got to someone, I'm guessing in Pakistan or somewhere like that. No offense meant, but it was certainly not here. So nothing is secure. I'm going to share just a few things. I'm going to pass it off to, obviously, my celebrity guest. All this guy is. Seriously, I thought I was the drum. Apparently not. What were they? I'm starstruck, really. I just need an autograph, and then I can be on my way. I heard there's some free muffins. So thank you for that. Let's talk about enrollment. Thank you. So you're talking about, now let me tell you something that you don't know, which is, and our esteemed congressman can tell us this. You know who gets access to our information first, right? We have to verify your eligibility into Obamacare via the IRS. Who comes right after the IRS? Anyone want to shout it out? I love audience participation. Go ahead. Can somebody say AA? Wrong meeting, sir. No, the next one is the NSA and the FBI. Do you know who's last on the list of 8 that have access to our data? Just guess. Anyone have a wild guess? No, the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is written into the law. What does that tell you? You control your own inference there. Okay, so that's very important. You can't handle why we went out and spent $635 million on an enrollment system and then admit 2 days later that it was 10-year-old technology is an insult to all Americans. I would have done it for 632. And I know what I'm doing. All right? So the point is they did use an inferior infrastructure. If we can have Amazon, Google, and companies like that that can transact millions of transactions per second virtually, why didn't we hire the best and the brightest to begin with? Why didn't we go to the very best and say, we have a massive data issue. How do we handle this? No, we didn't. No, we didn't. And I bet if you do a little bit of digging, we're going to find out whoever was selected to do this database is retired and a celebrity like my friend. So I'm not here to give you doom and gloom. There are ways to fix this, but if you remember HMOs, yeah, they worked out well. Who's still in an HMO today? No one, because they don't exist. This is exactly what's happening. The president said you can keep your doctor. If you read the real small print, it said if you were married to one. I think that's the only way you can. And I'm not. But I'll tell you, I live in Lake Forest, and I'm not trying to impress you. I'm impressing upon you that there's a lot of doctors there. And the truth of the matter is you may have some physicians I'm here to answer questions afterwards on large group underwriting, large group thing in terms of healthcare and why it may not work. All I ask is at the end, can you just give me a round of applause? Because that, you know, I'm in therapy. Okay, fine.
Can you tell Paul used to be a stand-up comedian in New York City? Thank you, Paul. Yes, when it comes to funny stuff, all I have are my books. First of all, I want to start by giving Congressman Hultgren a round of applause. Because he is the only representative on the U.S. level in Illinois that stood with us, the Tea Party movement, from the beginning in fighting the funding of this horrible legislation and tying it to the debt ceiling deal. What I'm very upset about is that the other Republicans, who remain unnamed, and including our fearless stalwart leader, Johnny Boehner, they decided not to use the Hastert rule. And the Hastert rule was suspended so that the money that was sent from the Senate would be spent, and then of course we'd spend money on Obamacare. And what I was screaming from the top of the hills was, why didn't you just wait a week? Because I already got the cancellation letters for a few of my clients. I know that the rest are coming. Just hang on for 7 days! And they couldn't hang on for 7 days. So now, here's what I'm getting. I just wrote a piece, it's up at truthaboutabamacare.com. Substandard plans, Mr. President? You're lying again. See, this is what he said. You like your plan, you can keep your plan, and we'll take it away from you. Except me. What's happened is all of these plans that are being canceled right now are plans from carriers that are operating inside of the Obamacare exchange. Okay? A carrier has a choice. I'm going to go in the exchange and offer plans, or I'm going to not go in the exchange and offer plans. And our fearless leader in Illinois, Pat Quinn, expected 16 carriers to just voluntarily go inside the Obamacare exchange and sell products. Guess how many did? 5. Right? Now, he'll tell you 6 did. But the 6th one isn't really an insurance company, in my opinion. It's called Land of Lincoln Health. And you see, you know where they got their startup capital? From us. That's right. We gave them $136 million of startup capital to become an insurance company. So they could, quote, keep the for-profit companies honest. That was under the Obamacare co-op bill, which was killed in the sequester. You know how they were saying, the establishment Republicans, well, you can't kill Obamacare, you can't tie it to the debt ceiling because that's mandatory spending. Guess what? The co-op program was killed in his sequester, $2 billion of mandatory spending. So yes, we can defund the legislation. We just don't have a Republican Party willing to do so. And that's the problem. So because Blue Cross Blue Shield, oh, by the way, you know the privilege that you get for Land of Lincoln starting next year? Guess what? For giving them $136 million to become an insurance company, you get to buy their crappy insurance. Yeah, that's great. Forward. So, the 3 carriers that are going in the exchange that have existing clients are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, look what I brought, right? Humana and Aetna. Even though we have 6 carriers, these are the 3 that have existing policyholders. Because they decide to offer products inside the exchange, every product they have already sold that is non-grandfathered, right, means a policy was purchased after the law passed on March 23rd, 2010. Every single one of those policies from late 2010, 2011, 2012, and thus far in 2013 gets to be fundamentally transformed. Yeah, as of December 30th, 2014. So let me just share with you, and this is at the latest article at truthaboutabamacare.com, little Blue Cross renewal letters that are coming now, conveniently after the debt ceiling deal. Thanks, Blue Cross. Here we go. This is a client who had this is a family policy, $7,000 deductible, 100% coverage afterward. His premium for his family was $576.62 a month, right? Guess what it is after we sprinkle a little hopium on it, right? Here's what we got. The new premium is going to be $911.32 a month. Now, what kind of plan is that? That's for the cheapest plan. It's called the bronze plan. Yeah? If you've read any of the old philosophers, they talked about the bronze plans, metal, gold, silver, platinum. Kind of funny. It kind of emulates that kind of communist thought, right? So here's what he's got, a $900 new premium as opposed to his $460.27 premium. And what happens to his out-of-pocket expense? His family deductible, you'll see his actual policy schedule online. His family deductible was $7,000, HSA qualified, 100% coverage afterward. Guess what it is now, right? Hope and change is applied, $12,700 out of pocket in the cheapest plan, which is called the Bronze Plan, right? And this is not an isolated example. I got tons of them. They're all coming now, okay? This is because Blue Cross has decided to operate within the exchange. If you have Humana, you're going to lose it. It's an individual or family member by December 30th. If you have Aetna, you're going to lose it by December 30th if you purchased after March 23rd, 2010. That, my friends, is hope and change. That's what's coming. Now, Barack Obama says, these are, where's my prompter? These are substandard plans. These are from the old market, right? That's a bunch of garbage, okay? As you'll see on the latest piece I wrote, every one of these policies that were written after, or sold or purchased, after 9/23/2010, right? When they piled on 65 free preventative care exams. Nothing's free if you have a working cerebral cortex. Someone's paying for that, right? It's us. But he says, it's free, right? So that's free, 65 of those, right? What else do we pile on? We put the medical loss ratios in place. Paul alluded to it just for a few minutes, right? Are you working out? Paul alluded to that. Every health insurance company that underwrites less than 50 people, right? They have to reduce their operating margin, not their profit margin, their operating margin. What it costs to be an insurance company, right? Down to 20%. If you underwrite more than 50%, you have to drop down to 15% or less operating margin. So what did we have? Since Obamacare passed, no coverage from the mainstream media, we've lost 13 health insurance companies around the country that used to cater to individual and family policyholders. So what we've created is an insurance cartel, a monopoly. And think in your head now, who's left selling health insurance in the country? United, right? Aetna, Cigna, Humana, Blue Cross, maybe Assurant, the sixth. That's all we got left, folks. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to tie that one agency that we all trust so much, the Internal Revenue Service, right, to the application so that we can artificially lower the massive cost of health insurance. If you saw me on the last time I was on Fox, I had the little anti-establishment whiteboard. Hi, Carl, right? And it had the cost of health insurance, the actual cost for a family of four making the average income of $51,144, right? They get to have a little hopium sprinkled on there, a little OPM, other people's money, that goes in and reduces the premium magically, right? The problem with what the Republican Party did by funding this legislation is that here's what was happening, right? This is the problem. Okay?
I'll help him here.
Thank you, Paul. So here's what we had. We had a nice taut vein. We had the rubber tied around the arm, right? We had a needle in the vein, right? It was all set to go, and the hopiometics were ready to take the drug, right? The drug, the needle, is called the state exchanges. Guess what wasn't in the needle, right? The hopium. They needed that. What's hopium? OPM, other people's money. Republicans said, let's just give them some more, right? So the drug went in the needle. Injected was the drug. Now, you think those people who are going to have their premiums reduced by $8,000 a year for a family of four, average income, you think they're going to vote against anybody that takes away from them? Not a chance. If you think so, name me one entitlement that's ever been repealed. Name me one. This is what our Republican Party leadership did to us. This is why there's a Tea Party movement and there's an Americans for Prosperity movement. Now, I'm just going to give you a little synopsis and then we're going to open it up for questions. I want you to know what our friends on the left, of which I have none, right? Political. Okay? Here's what they're going to be doing in less than 60 days. They're implementing what we in the insurance industry call community rating. Community rating. Okay? So it has failed miserably in 8 states already. These people never think of anything on their own. They just take the worst possible policy and then spread it all over 50 states or 57 if you're Barack Obama. Right?
Thanks, that was great. I am all for repeal and replace. And Congressman Hultgren, I completely echo what Steve just said. Thank you. I heard you under Bill S. and I was like, thank you, he's the only one who voted no on that definitely. So thank you. But I'm all for repeal and replace Obamacare. But someone else earlier was saying, no, don't touch it. Just let it die in its own. It's the nail in the coffin. Why don't we try and fight? And that's someone else discouragingly said, oh, it's going to take it's a long haul to get rid of Obamacare. What's your perspective?
Well, to me, it's pretty clear. Now, when, if not now, when? When are we going to do it? I just felt like September 30th, October 1st was really important. That we had to stand up. Otherwise, we were complicit in this thing. I was very frustrated in how it ended. I absolutely agree with Steven too that we have been vindicated somewhat in the last couple of weeks of what we were fighting for was the right thing. We were fighting for the American people. People are realizing this. These notices, like Steven was talking about, have been going out of cancellations of huge 100% increases in premiums, huge increases in out-of-pocket expenses because of high deductibles. So whatever we can do, any opportunity we can, we've got to get this done. I mean, my biggest frustration for the first 16 days of October was we didn't have good tactics. We had it good. We agreed that this is a horrible law that's going to hurt America and hurt our future. We just didn't have a good strategy of how are we going to stay strong in this. And that's ultimately what happened was pressure got big. People caved. People make their own decisions, and they'll have to be responsible to their own constituents of the decisions that they make on those votes. But I just think if we could have held out for another 24 hours or another 7 days, it was hard, it was painful, but I think we were so close to really having some significant impact. One thing I will say that we have to point out, on the 16th is when this bill passed. At noon on the 16th, there was no bill. There was nothing. And by, I think, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Senate voted on it. By 8 o'clock and 7 o'clock at night, we voted on it. Then the President signed it. So literally in less than 12 hours, they put something together to get it passed. I still think we could have said, no, we won't do this. Let's go back to the drawing board. And I think then that would have strengthened some of our Senate Republicans to be able to come and say, this is really what the impact we could have had. So we'll see. I want every opportunity we can. We've got to keep pushing on this. I think our next significant impact is looking at elections for 14, but right now we see Mary Landrieu, we see other people who are scared to death of how this is impacting them and their constituents, and we've got to just keep the pressure on our own senators, our own members of Congress, but also other states who have voted for this thing, caved on this thing, and looked for every chance we get. We've got another one coming up in January, another one coming up early February. My fear is, as Paul and Steven have said, is once an entitlement is in, it's so hard to get it rooted back out again. The roots go in so fast. It is unbelievably fast. I've done some study on roots, which is incredible. When you see how fast roots can grow of a plant, but you see an entitlement, how fast the roots can grow, and people start expecting this and demanding it, how difficult it is to root it back out again. That's why this was such a key time and an absolutely lost opportunity to have significant change, and why I was so sad of what ultimately happened there. A couple bright things that have come out of this. One is people are paying attention like they haven't before. And I've seen such a dramatic shift in the last 30 days, maybe 40 days, to go back even a little bit further, where people were talking about this health care law, and now they're talking about this health care law that affects me and my family. It was kind of this health care law out there, and now they're seeing, this is my health care that this is impacting. This is my family. This is my budget that I can't afford. Personally, this is my budget that I can't afford. Seeing probably about a $12,000 to $14,000 increase for me and my family. We're trying to figure that out. I've got 2 kids that are going to be in college next year. How are we going to do that? All of you, and I mean, I just know my constituents are in a much more difficult spot than that, but everybody is starting to realize this really hurts, and something's got to happen. So let's just keep the pressure up. Let's keep informing people. People are paying attention, and I do think there's vindication for those of us who stood up and said, this is an important fight. Now people are saying, you know what, you're right, this is an important fight, and we appreciate that you were doing it. I think more and more people, in spite of what the media has been doing, and even as I kind of started my remarks on with NBC and CBS coming out saying the absolute untruth that was said over the last years that they knew was untruth coming out of the administration, people are seeing that as well. So every chance we can get, let's go after this, let's keep talking about it, let's keep grassroots engaged, let's look for vulnerable candidates, and look for opportunities to be doing that. I still think, I believe that the people who have put this in place, none of us Republicans voted for this. None of us. None of us wanted it. It was Democrats that put this in. It's the first entitlement in history. You got to tell people this. First entitlement in history that majority voted for it. Through the House, through the Senate, signed by the President, it was only Democrats that voted for it. And we got to keep reminding people, they're the ones who want this, they're the ones who are taking away your choice, raising your costs, raising your deductible, making you sicker, making you have coverage that you absolutely don't need and can't use, and having to pay for it. They're the ones who are responsible for it. Let's keep pushing my Republican colleagues to be strong, but it's the Democrats who are the ones who are really the ones who voted for this, and no Republican voted for it. So, anyhow, that's what I would say. Love to hear your thoughts too, guys.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I just want to say that the GOP is no Nancy Pelosi. And the Democratic Party knows how to hang together regardless of what the public thinks. They pushed this bill forward. It was so against the majority of Americans. They didn't care about whether they were going to be reelected or not. They were going to shove their ideology down our throats. And the GOP, unless they get some kahunas, are never going to help the American public. We're never going to have the same United States that we were born into as children. They never will. And it's a matter of being united. So, I mean, we can make all the excuses in the world, but we have to stand united. And then the second part that I wanted to say is that what is not being addressed here, that I've seen in the past when we're talking about the health care, is the reason for it for the whole plan to come to fruition. And that is to enslave the American people. And that is to have a hand in every part of their life. That is to gather information. So, because there's a greater picture than just health care. That is to implode our economy and destroy this nation. And I think more should be said about that. Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind if I made a few personal comments. I think complaining has never gotten us, and I'm not implying you are, but complaining about where we are never got us anywhere. I think you need to inspire folks. And if you don't mind me sharing just for 2 minutes an inspirational story and why I'm so committed and impassioned by this. 10 years ago, I was blessed with the birth of a child named Sophia. Beautiful little blonde-haired girl with blue eyes. She was beautiful, still is. And we, within 30 days, were told that she had hypotrophic cardiomyopathy, which is a fatal heart disease. We knew then, and when she was 30 days of age, that she'd need open heart surgery. And that's a terrifying prospect for a parent, just terrifying. But here, the beauty of the healthcare system that we have, it may be expensive, but over the next 6 years, because Sophia had her open heart surgery when she was 7 at Mayo Clinic, was that we had 7 years to educate ourselves and find the best possible surgeons in the country. We chose a gentleman who specialized in this in Mayo, and he did a magnificent surgery. 7 years ago, we had the surgery. In 4.5 days, we were driving home from Mayo. 4.5 days. It's amazing. This is where our healthcare system is. So anyone here has had health issues, you can empathize with me. Now let me tell you quickly the 2 things that changed my life and why I think I was called to do this. And as you know, I had done an exploratory for running for U.S. Senate. I think it's Jim Overwest in the audience. Hi Jim, how are you? The issue is this. So 4.5 days later, we're home. We're having dinner. My daughter turns to me at 7 and says, Dad, I have a question. How do you work on a heart? How do you operate on a heart if it's beating? I said, Sophia, that's a great question. The truth is your heart isn't beating when they operate on it. They anesthetize your entire body. They put it to sleep, and your heart's a muscle, and it goes to sleep. She looked at me at 7 years old. She's very precocious, and she said, Dad, so I was dead. And I said, sweetheart, for 4 hours of your life, you were not there, but your soul went to heaven. You got to play with God for a while. And God so loved you that he hugged you when he sent you back to Mom and Dad, because had he not, our hearts would have been broken. Now that might have been a great end to that story, until my daughter said to me a week later, Dad, would you like to know what heaven looks like? I says, yes, I'll probably never see it. She said to me, Dad, I can tell you the floors were all glass. I could see through them. The walls were gold and really sparkly, and there were beautiful flowers everywhere. So a week later, we were meeting with Father Robert Barron. I don't know if you know Father through the story, he says, well, go home and read Revelations. Who here knows what Revelation says 4 times about heaven? It says the walls are gold with jewels, there's beautiful flowers everywhere, and the floors are crystal. And a 7-year-old daughter has never picked up a Bible, can't know that. And that was the call to me to say that if we don't preserve the quality of our health care, we're not going to have surgeons to operate on my daughter's heart, strike that, my daughter's heart, when we get 15 and 20 years down the road. And that is a major concern, the access to quality physicians. So I'm sorry to be personal, I think it means a lot. Hopefully there's other similar stories, but we need to keep inspiring, not complaining. And that's my position.
Yes, I am quite curious about our Congress. I'm sure they don't have our health insurance they're gonna dump on us. Anybody know where they get theirs and what kind they have?
Yeah, I want to hear Steven's point too, but we do have, it depends on who you are. So some of the leaders will still stay in the federal employees health insurance plan. There's kind of a special plan that we've got. Most of us, rank and file, if we're going, unless we're going to go do something individually ourselves, which we could, we will be in, have to enroll in the DC exchange. So we'll be in the DC exchange, rank and file members of Congress. The one thing that I think is absolutely unfair and I've been fighting against is that the president acted unilaterally to allow continued government payment to members of Congress and staff. And it's one of the things we fought for in those 14, 15 days to say this is totally unfair. We're passing laws exempting ourselves out, exempting the White House out, exempting cabinet members out. Kathleen Sebelius doesn't have to be a part of this. And then those of us who are in it are still getting a subsidy, basically, at taxpayer expense for that. So those are kind of the 2 options for members of Congress. Steven, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
He's absolutely right. In the legislation, there are only a few entities named that are exempt from Obamacare. Of course, there's the president, right? The vice president, their cabinet members, certain named religious groups, right? And, as soon as I found out certain religious groups, there was an article that said it's probably going to be the Amish that will be exempt. They tie it to whether you pay into Social Security or not. As soon as I heard that, I started growing a beard and whittling wood so I could be exempt, right? But here's what members of Congress did. You see, they didn't read the bill, right, before they passed it because Pelosi said we didn't have to, right? And then what happened was around 2013, the insurance carrier started saying, here's a little tease of what it's going to cost you, Congress critters, right? You excluded, Randy. And so they sent out these premiums and they said, oh my God, that's really expensive. Well, maybe we should just read the part about how much subsidy we get, OPM, other people's money, to lower the premium. So they started looking and they go, wait a minute, we members of Congress, correct me if I'm wrong, Congressman, make $176,000 a year. 174, right? But the subsidy eligibility for individuals to receive a subsidy, the cap is $46,000, 62 as a couple, and $94,200 for a family of 4, or 400% above the federal poverty. They go, let me see, 174 is a lot more than 46, which means we're going to pay the whole Obamacare premium. So they said, Mr. President, could you give us a bailout from the taxpayer? We'd like the same amount we were getting in the congressional health plan, which was 73%. So Barack Obama waved his magic fiat wand, right? And he just waved it and said that OPM, hey, give him, or OMB, right, Office of Management and Budget, just give him the same that they had right now. So if you saw me on ABC with little Luis Gutierrez, right, he would not admit that he gets this subsidy. So of course the ABC host said, well, we'll have him answer that in the After Dark segment, right? Which never happened because he won't admit it. Hannity tried to pin him on it. He won't admit it. The truth is, here's what's going to happen in 2014. The union members who pushed and knocked on doors for this law, right? Old Mr. Trump was in the White House, Mr. Obama, one of many visits just about a month or so ago, and he said, hey, guess what? Your law is destroying the 40-hour work week. We're about to lose our Cadillac health insurance plans. We want you to extend the waiver that we've had since 2010. We want you to make that for 2014 and permanent. And when I say waiver, let me be clear, Mr. Obama, we want the taxpayer to bail us out on our Cadillac health insurance plans, right? If you think that's not going to happen, you're crazy. That's coming. So what are we going to have in 2014? Unions waived, members of Congress bailed out by the taxpayer, right? Big business delayed for a year, no worries, right, until 2015. Guess who has to deal with it? Us, we the people. Yes, they are exempt from going in the exchange, right, but actually a residence, legal residents can actually buy inside the exchange, but illegal aliens are exempt. But you see, that's why, if you saw the video, Kathleen Sebelius, right, she said, that's why we need comprehensive immigration reform, which is, in conservative speak, that means amnesty. So we can put them all on Obamacare too. You know, like Blago did with our Medicaid program. Ooh, was that my inside voice coming out? Yeah. 77,000 illegals are on our Medicaid program. You wonder why a child with throat cancer in Illinois has a 1 in 3 chance of seeing a specialist? They're all in front of her.
Well, I'm sorry to have to cut off our questions. I am very sorry. This has been wonderful. I've enjoyed listening. I'm smarter for it. And I'd encourage you, our guests will be here for a little while. Feel free to talk to them. But I don't know about you. I got up really early today. I'm really hungry. So what we have is we have lunch.